How much money would you need, invested, to never have to work another day in your life? It sounds like a fantasy question, but there's a surprisingly simple formula that gives you a real number, and it's one of the most famous ideas in all of personal finance. It's called the 4% rule. Today, I'll explain exactly what it means, where it came from, how to calculate your own number, and the important caveats nobody mentions. By the end, you'll be able to put an actual figure on your financial freedom. Let's get into it. Here's the core idea in one sentence. The 4% rule says that if you can live on 4% of your investment portfolio in the first year of retirement, and then adjust that amount for inflation each year, your money should last for decades, around 30 years or more. In other words, you don't need to save enough to spend down your whole pile. You need enough that the growth and income from your investments can quietly refill most of what you take out. Let's turn that into your number, because this is where it gets powerful. 4% is 1/25th. So the rule flips into a beautifully simple target. You need roughly 25 times your annual expenses invested to be financially independent. Let me say that again, because it's the whole video. Take what you spend in a year, multiply by 25, and that's your freedom number. If you spend 30,000 euros a year, your target is 750,000. If you spend 20,000, it's 500,000. Notice what that means. The less you need to live on, the smaller the mountain you have to climb. Your spending, not just your income, determines how far away freedom is. Where does this come from? It's based on research often called the Trinity Study, which looked at decades of historical market data and asked a simple question. What withdrawal rate would have survived even the worst periods in history without running out of money? The answer, across stocks and bonds over 30-year windows, was around 4%. It's not a random guess. It's drawn from how real portfolios behaved through crashes, recessions, and inflation. That's what makes it a useful rule of thumb rather than wishful thinking. But, and this is important, it is a rule of thumb, not a physical law, so let's talk honestly about the caveats. First, it's based on past history, and the future can differ. Markets could behave worse than any period we've seen. Second, there's something called sequence risk. If a big crash hits in the very first years after you stop working, withdrawing during that drop can do lasting damage, far more than the same crash later on. Third, 30 years was the original test window. If you retire very young and need the money to last 50 years, 4% may be a little too aggressive, and something closer to 3 or 3.5% is safer. So does that mean the rule is broken? Not at all. It means you use it with flexibility, and flexibility is the secret ingredient. The people who make early financial independence work are rarely rigid. In a bad market year, they trim their spending a little, or pick up some part-time income, instead of blindly withdrawing the full amount while their portfolio is down. That single habit, being willing to adjust in tough years, dramatically increases the odds your money lasts. The 4% rule works best not as a strict command, but as a target with a flexible hand on the wheel. Here's something the number doesn't capture, and it might be the most valuable part. Reaching 25 times your expenses isn't only about never working again. Most people who hit it don't actually quit everything. What it really buys is options. The freedom to leave a toxic job. The freedom to take a lower-paying job you love. The freedom to start something risky, take a year off, or simply stop worrying. Financial independence isn't really about sitting on a beach forever. It's about work becoming a choice instead of a cage. And you start feeling that freedom long before you hit the full number, because every step closer gives you more room to breathe. Let me give you one more practical reframe. The 4% rule shows that there are only 2 levers to pull, and you control both. Lever 1, grow your investments, earn more, save more, invest consistently, let compounding do the heavy lifting over time. Lever 2, Lower your annual expenses, because remember, your target is 25 times what you spend. Every time you permanently reduce your yearly spending, you don't just save that money once. You shrink your entire freedom number by 25 times that amount. Cutting €3,000 a year from your lifestyle lowers your target by 75,000. That's the quiet superpower of spending less. It works on both sides of the equation at once. So let's bring it together. The 4% rule says you can withdraw about 4% of your portfolio a year, adjusted for inflation, and have a strong chance of it lasting for decades. That means your freedom number is roughly 25 times your annual expenses. It comes from real historical data, but use it with flexibility, mind sequence risk, consider a lower rate if you're retiring very young, and be willing to adjust in bad years. And remember, it gives you options long before you reach the finish line. 2 levers control your freedom: invest more and spend less. Both are in your hands. If this helped, the next episode is a real experiment. What happens when you track every single euro you spend for 30 days? The results surprise almost everyone. I'll see you there.